What's up, Silas here? On an unseasonably cold, it's not unseasonably cold, it's just been cold for a while here in Nairobi, Kenya. It's just, out here on the balcony. I'm going to read you guys something from Everyday Feminism, which is a site that I've been following of late because it's just interesting to me. Personally, I think if the creator of this site came out and just said it was entire time some elaborate ruse or just one of the longest running posts on the internet, I would completely believe it. But it does have a decent following, and people actually answered this thing, they interact with it. And for those of you who don't know what a poe is, it's kind of when you say something, when you make a parody or something or a sarcastic comment about something, and people can't tell if you're actually making fun of the thing or if you're really being that thing. So it's just that kind of situation where some of the things in this site, some of the things I post are just like shocking, where it's like, wow, this is like a friend of mine put it excellently, where he just said it's just really odd to imagine the world that they live in. So let's just jump right into this. This is going to be, for the title of this is going to be The Feminist Guide to Non-Racist Flirting with Women of Color. So this is for those of you who might have jungle fever, unless you're some kind of racist, race realist, white power milk drinking, finger flashing, Donald Trump loving person, then you probably think all races are the same, and you may want to actually go and date somebody outside of your race. Because as I say, non-racist flirting with women of color, since we know that racism is whiteness plus privilege plus power, or I'm forgetting this actual equation, but I don't need to know this because I'm not a person, I'm not white, I'm a person of color, so I just know we can't be racist. So this is only for white people because it's women of color. I'm assuming that me as a male of color, if I was flirting with a woman of color, I couldn't be racist to her. So even if I didn't follow any of this, so this is for the white people, and I know a lot of white people. It's probably, I think majority of the people watching my channel are probably white. I don't know, since you guys are racist, I don't know what you're doing. Maybe you're racist. Anyway, so let's get into this. Let's just get into the site and let's just jump right into this. It's going to be on the screen because I want you guys to understand that I'm not making this stuff up. This is an actual site that actually exists, that's on the internet, that you could follow on Facebook like this button. If you're on Facebook, please follow these people. These people are amazing. Okay, it just starts off at the top of the title. Transform white guilt into anti-racist action. So I think this is actually also targeting, like I've talked about this before, how feminism has just appropriated the situations for other people. There was one they were talking about, because some of the things actually make some good points, because they were talking about how with Black Lives Matter, one of the main points they're saying people are forgetting or missing is the fact that with police it's different, like black on black violence, gang members shooting other black people, that's like, it's a gang member. But then when a policeman does it, the police are ostensibly there, tax money's taken, then the police are ostensibly there to protect people, even though I don't think it's protection. I've talked about this. I don't know if I didn't record a video, but I have a blog post. Might link the blog post. Not going to be sure about that. But it's called Police Are Enforcement Agents. They're supposed to enforce the law. They're supposed to enforce the state's law. So they're not really peace officers. They're enforcing laws set by the government, and they're also not even supposed to keep you safe. Like a policeman, if he's seeing you being shot at, he has no actual responsibility to stop you from being shot or to jump in front of the bullet. He can shoot the person shooting you because the person shooting at you might be breaking the law. But he has no responsibility, or they have no responsibility, to actually keep you safe or prevent harm that's coming onto you. Like, let's say you're in a river drowning, the policeman doesn't have to jump in and like save you, because that's not his job. So anyway, this is transform white guilt into anti-racist action. So they're appropriating racism and things like that, because it's not just feminism, it's everyday isms, everyday everything-ism. And there's this call to action, like, dear beloved leader, we're going to be real with you. We're going to be real, keeping it real. We're going to be real with you. We're asking you to join our membership program so we can become fully financially sustainable. And you get some cool perks too. With dropping ad rates across the media industry where continuous risks. So this is call out for, this is happening to a lot of websites where there's problems happening and things like that. But let's just jump into the article here, right? Yeah, you guys excited? I'm excited. I think this is going to be awesome. So we got some This person looks mixed race. This lady here, this female. Now I don't know. For some people, they may consider that black, but she could be mixed. This guy next to her could be Arab, but I'm guessing he's a white male. Maybe that it's an eye stock. I don't know. It's got this photo. So let's get into this. I don't know if I'm going to do a voice. I might do a voice for some of the sections. No, this is going to be awesome. I'm excited. Let's go on this journey. Let's learn. For those of you who might catch some jungle fever, or what's the other ones? I know jungle fever is like if you like black people. I know there's this thing I used to joke around, like I don't play in the snow. Like playing in the snow is if white women. I don't know. What would the sand would be? Nah, that's I don't know. There's all these other racist things I can say right here. If you're still with me, congratulations. Let's go. Okay, I've got some important info for you if you're a white guy who dates women. Especially if you're in what I'd like to think of as the most exciting stages of dating. The moment right before you've met someone new, when there are all kinds of possibilities for connecting, getting butterflies, and having fun. Okay, maybe exciting isn't quite the word you'd use for this stage. Since you haven't found someone, there's also a chance of rejection and compatibility and heartache. Yeah, that rejection thing is not something that women have to deal with in general. It's just it's a male thing, but at least they care. They're actually giving it some actual, like, yeah, we know you guys have to deal with the rejection. That's tough. So this may be a little nerve-wracking, but picture yourself in a setting where you just might meet someone special. A mixer with other people looking to mingle, an online dating site. Now, I don't know what I'm doing with this voice. I don't know, is this voice like, is this general American female, or is it going too much white female? Is this a white female writing this? Is there a name? Maisha L.Z. Johnson. Okay, Maisha, that's life in Swahili. That means life. Maisha Z. Johnson. I'm not thinking this is a white person. Might click. Let's click and see. Open new tab. Maisha Johnson. No, is it going anywhere? No. Maisha Z. Johnson. Is that her? No, that's just a stock photo. But yeah, I don't think she's white. So do I know a black? No. Let's just go with the voice that I had. Okay. You spot someone you found attractive. Sorry about the digression. There's probably going to be more. She's a woman of color, and she interests you, and you know, and that's all you know about her so far. What's this here? Pause. White supremacy and patriarchy are about to make you look like a jerk, and you don't even know it. Wait, is this like part of the article? I don't even know what's going on with this thing. Like I said, I normally just follow them on Facebook. I don't actually go to the actual website because it's like it's tough. But okay, so pause. White supremacy and patriarchy are about to make you look like a jerk, and you don't even know it. So this is not even a link to another article. Is this something? Is that a call out from this article? You guys are still with me? Okay, let's go back into this. Before you go any further, I'm here to help you out. The tips I'm about to share can steer you away from some shitty social norms that women of color have to deal with way too often. This isn't quite a wing woman type situation, if that's what you're thinking. I don't have any magical key to get you with any women of color. We're all unique people, so it's not as if one set of rules guarantees you a connection with one of us. We're all unique people, yet one of us. Anyway, I don't get that whole collectivist thing. It doesn't really work out. Anyway, unfortunately, a lot of tools that you might hope to rely on when flirting will only hurt the woman you're pursuing and leave you nursing the wounds of more rejection. So here's what you're up against. Society spreads some damaging messages about women of color when it comes to sex and relationships. These messages are reinforced everywhere, from music to television to pornography, so there's a good chance you've internalized some of them. There are countless accounts from women of color on the negative dating interactions they've had, from initial approach through sex and more. I'm sure there are countless ones, because women are not the ones to keep negative interactions to themselves at all. They talk about it a lot, which is not a bad thing. But it's something that they do. And we kind of know about that. And this is actually another example of it. But back into it. Though, what is this? We're often fetishized, exotified, and demeaned, even by men who are supposedly interested in building a real connection with us. Though my dating history includes various genders and races, various genders, isn't there like two? Oh no, this is everyday feminism, so there's probably at least, I don't know what's the medium number now. 25 probably. I don't know. So we don't know how many she's actually. Oh, I guess transgender probably counts. Maybe she's dated trans, so that could be like various genders of 3. Anyway, so even just on the base level. But anyway, so though my dating history includes a various genders includes though my dating history includes of various genders and races. Wow, I think my mind actually corrected that sentence when I first read it, but let me just try and read it as it is. Though my dating history includes of various genders and races, and my negative experiences have been limited to white men, it's clear that white supremacy and patriarchy inform these interactions in a particular way. Okay. And a lot of times, it's not a good look. I've heard all kinds of come-ons that turn me off, piss me off, and gross me out. There were plenty of men who were outright insulting without apology. And if you're one of those guys actually looking to demean women of color when you approach them, I leave you with a pro tip to leave us all the hell alone until you can work out some of those issues without hurting any of us. But if you also had interactions with men who really were trying their best, but I've also had interactions with men who were really trying their best to appeal to me. Some succeeded. Many, unfortunately, didn't mean to insult me, but they followed common patterns of entitlement that left me without much hope that they would really value me as a person. And this is okay. Like, a lot of situations you get in interactions with somebody, you don't have to get along. How many people do you actually meet in your life? And how many of them, what percentage of them are you actually friends with after you've met them? And this is just friends, just like a regular friend. Maybe you think of calling them once in a while, hanging out, like, hey, if I'm going out to eat, like, oh, if this person was there, it was cool. Like that kind of basic kind of relationship. So to get to the point where you're actually in a romantic, intimate relationship with somebody, the bar is going to be much higher. And I think that's okay to have that. Like, you shouldn't really expect yourself to click. Even if someone is not insulting you, somebody could be, I don't know if somebody could be perfectly nice by your definition and then not, but then I guess if you have certain things, like you have certain goals, maybe they need to be a certain age because you want to have kids and start a family, they might want to believe in a certain belief system that you share in. So they could be nice, but you can still not get along with them. They don't have to offend you for you to be like, okay, we can't actually have a relationship. But getting back into this, you can do better than that. I'm sure you've got something special that can help you stand apart from the rest of the strategies, from the rest, and the strategies I'm sharing here could help you be among those who manage to approach women of color in a respectful way. So I think they're kind of assuming like the person who would actually come to this site to read this is already into the whole feminist movement and wants to be one of those responsible white partners of a colored woman. And yeah, okay. So what you could have once oppressive systems stop messing with you. What? Look, what? Are you guys reading this sentence with me? What you could have once oppressive systems stop messing. Oh, okay. I'm reading this too slowly. I'm the one who is mentally handicapped with this situation here. What you could have once oppressive systems stop messing with your game. So this is saying what you could have. Like this is what I'm offering to you. So excuse that one. That one completely on me on that one. Apology, everyday feminism. Instead of continuing a hurtful pattern, we could have a whole new way of relating to each other as white men and women of color. Yeah, I assumed, right? This is completely for white men. So my white listeners out there who may want to, yeah, I'm doing a favor for you. I'm giving you this information via Everyday Feminism. You can become an EF member and thank them. You could have an awesome, respectful, and mutually beneficial experience once you learn respectful ways to connect with women of color. Maybe you think I'm assuming you don't know what you're doing here and stereotyping white guys and women of color alike by writing this guide. After all, can showing respect to a woman of color really be all that different from respecting a white woman? Patriarchal lies can trick you into approaching white women in offensive ways too. So it isn't enough to have just one general so isn't it enough to just have one general guide to non-creepy flirting? And there's a link here. There's an actual feminist guide to non-creepy flirting. So if you do want to check that out, I am not going to leave a link to this article below this video, but you can search it out yourself and find all this excellent material from Everyday Feminism. Don't worry, I'm rooting for happiness both for you and the women you're trying to flirt with. I'm not demonizing you, and you probably don't think of yourself as racist or sexist. So let's be clear about where the potential racism and sexism in your actions is really from. So it's not about your thoughts, it's not about who you are, it's about who the person decides you are. So if somebody decides you are racist and you're not, you still are racist because it's their experience that defines you. And this is one thing I've been talking about, how I think like currently right now there's these metheist religions, metheist theologies, where it went from polytheism, it went from atomism, then polytheism, then monotheism, and now we're in the metheist stage where every person, every believer in these religions, in these different kind of religions, which come out like socialism, statism, feminism, these kind of isms, they're kind of in a situation where they are the creator of. They shape the reality tunnels. They shape reality to how they see it and mold your behavior into what is appropriate for them. So it's this weird kind of situation. I need to flesh that out in a better way. But yeah, getting back into this, I'm going all over the place here. Apologies for this. Okay, let me stop apologizing. I'm not apologizing. It's kind of how I like making these videos. And if you're still with me, good on you. Okay, so it's not about your intentions. It's about the systems in our society that encourage white men to relate to women of color in ways that have a racist or sexist impact, even if you don't mean to do it. So unless you deliberately worked to unlearn what these oppressive systems have taught you, you're probably working with some unconscious, hurtful ideas about how to approach a woman of color. But remember, they're all different. So even though they're all different, everything you've learned from these systems are potentially harmful to all of them. So just keep that in mind. But if you're looking to start a conversation, you can unlearn these unconscious biases to make it a respectful conversation, not one based on the inherently unequal dynamics society has set up between white men and women of color. And I talked about this in a separate video, how by definition, once you talk about different categories, they're not going to be equal. Otherwise, you just call it the same category. Like the way they're calling white men, they're saying all white men are equally capable of having this racism thing. That's why they're not talking about Hispanic men, they're not talking about black men, because they're admitting that these people are different. They're admitting that Hispanic men, black men don't have the equal chance of being as racist and sexist, at least maybe sexist, but definitely not the equal chance of being as racist to women of color as white men. So they're admitting there are inequalities. So this whole idea that the social inequalities, there are differences. By definition, white men are a category here, women of color are a category here. They are different. They're women, they're color, they're white, they're men. Those are differences, and I don't understand. Differences are not necessarily a bad thing. I thought they're supposed to be pro-diversity. They talk about how diversity is a great thing, but then like, oh, we're all equal. Which one is it? Pick one. Okay, getting back into this. Any kind of relationship based on inequality is doomed, not only for rejection and heartache, but also for following harmful norms. I think it's not inequality, because complementary, like I've played on sports teams, you might have played on sports teams, the different positions are not equal, but we have an equal responsibility towards, or a shared responsibility, not equal, we have a shared responsibility towards maintaining the relationship, or in a team, we have a shared responsibility in doing what we can to ensure that we win or we do X, Y, Z. So, but we're not equal. Like we don't have the equal responsibilities, the same things to have to do on that team. And that's how I look at relationships. I think that's a complementary, a positive way to kind of have these things. Okay. So since there are no rules set in stone about what will work for you or the women you're interested in, think of these more as guiding principles. There's no guarantee that these tips will get you a date, and women of color don't owe you anything, no matter how respectful you are. But these strategies are a good starting place for figuring out what works for you and the women you're approaching. What's the worst that could happen? You could face some more rejection, but you also have the tools for handling it in a healthy way. And the best case scenario? The next time you get a chance to flirt with a woman of color who interests you, it could induce happy butterflies for you both. So the best case scenario is that they also get happy. I guess if you want to flirt with somebody, you want them to have the happy butterflies because they'll be more receptive to your advances. But yeah, so it's also a female site, so I get it. They're focusing more on like, yeah, this is the female. So it's like, hey, make the woman happy, you know, happy woman, happy wife, happy life, that kind of thing. So now we're finally going to get into the things. So check out these warnings for what not to do with ideas of what to do instead. So number 1, don't focus only on her race, even though this entire article is focusing on the fact that her race is going to make her entirely different from the white women that you may be used to. Don't focus on that. Know the fact that her race makes her different from white women, but do not focus on her race. Getting into it. Let's see how they rationalize this, because I could just be having this patriarchal mind and this bias and just this is hate. I could just be hate, man. But let's see what they actually say. Okay. Fetishizing, exotifying, dehumanizing. These are all common problems for women of color. The problem is that our race is acknowledged. The problem isn't that our race is acknowledged. It's that we're treated like our race is all we have to offer. I'm proud to be black, so if your opening line includes something like African Queen or I want you to be my first black girl, you might think it's a compliment. But actually, it feels pretty gross to know that you're approaching me only because of my race. What about I want you to be my first black girl means it's only that could just be a part of it. It could be a major part of it. It could be a partial part of it. It's not like they're talking to every single black girl. I mean, it could be like you're a very attractive black girl that happens to be at this science conference. I really like science. So there could be all these other things kind of tied into why. But we are visual beings, and they're acknowledging that. And she even said, I'm proud to be black. So he could also be proud that you're black and back into this. It feels like you're not actually seeing me as a human being, but a black person, an African queen. Queens are human beings. He called you black girl. Black girl is a human being. I'll make it through this. If you're you guys are still here. Okay. You probably hate to be blamed for the actions of your ancestors, but the truth is, white men throughout history have really fucked this one up for you. Colonization, slavery, and imperialism have all had white men reducing women of color to how we're different from white women, treating us like we're less desirable, but theirs to claim for exotic sexual adventures. I thought earlier in this article they just clearly said that women of color are different, but now it's women. So are they saying before that it's different with women of color because? So they're saying it's historical white men's fault for the difference between dating white women of color today because of what white men did in the past that made women of color different from white. I don't know if you guys if you guys you leave comments below this stuff. I mean it's starting to bother me. It's starting to bother me, but she's not bothered because I'm not bothered by this only because I can't shake off that disturbing history. It's also because that history has set up our modern world with the same terrible ideas about women of color and sex. So yeah, she's saying it's white men's fault in the past that white men today need a guide for dealing with women of color. So, for instance, have you ever watched pornography featuring black women? Don't be embarrassed. I have too. And sadly, it's difficult as hell to find porn that doesn't market and depict us with demeaning characterizations like jungle booties or ebony whores. I think in general, booty and this kind of thing is a common thing in the porno sphere for all races. It's kind of just what porn is. Like, it's there's n- porn isn't really known for its wholesomeness. It's kind of known for its raunchiness and that kind of. It's an objectification thing, and this even in porn, like in general, like with most men, like women are first of all, it's one of the fields where women are paid a lot more than the male porn stars, and also the males are normally just like reduced to just their body parts, whereas the women they're known more for their faces and their names and things like that. But yeah, look at someone like Stormy Daniels, who's I guess she's a white woman, so that's different. And I don't know. It's a lot rare for porn to show us simply being sexual beings without fetishizing focus on our race. Because that's kind of what porn does. It categorizes different things, and people like have like the BBWs, the big beautiful women, and they have like the Asian ones, they have like the redheads and things like this. Why do I know so much about porn? Because I'm a male. There's stuff about porn. You can do the research. Go online and research it. There's information out there. There's also a really good video of this guy Teal Deer who was just showing the different sections and how like different countries and different people search for porn in different ways. They're also doing like this porn that women search for, because like I think they said like a third of people watching porn is for women. And I've actually seen these things recently of like women's porn now being targeted for women. That's kind of like more like the romantic comedy, not the romantic comedy, more like those like romantic books like Fabio on the cover and things like that. So it's more about the. I think it's more about the foreplay and things like that, but I don't know. Yeah, I haven't watched any of it. But if anyone has and knows what that's about, let me know in the comment section. Okay. So if you focus only on my race, as if there's nothing else interesting about me, you fall right into that category of white men who demean me, even if you don't mean to. Oh, okay. So instead, find something other than her race to relate to. Okay, so you all know that. So all you know is that she's a woman of color, but you're not going to open with a line about her race. So what will you open with? Think about your goal here. Are you relating to her or are you othering her? After all, if you're trying to establish a connection, you're not going to do that by essentially saying, "Hey, I noticed that you're black." Really? I didn't realize it was so obvious. Yawn. So I don't know. I had no problem with that passage, I guess. The whole othering thing, I think by definition people are others, but that's okay. I kind of appreciate people's individuality, and like if I'm an individual, you're an individual, you are an other individual. So some of these terms seem to have a negative connotation embedded in them and how they use it, whereas I normally see these terms just the terms, but you use adjectives and situational situations, and the situational kind of application of it is what makes it negative or positive. Like the terms themselves are just definitive, not they're objective, but for them terms are subjective, and that's kind of a big difference, I think, in the way I look at the world and the way some people look at the world here. And I think that's also plays into that whole metheism thing, where they're like, this is not just me as an individual dealing with an entire world of set up objects and defined things, but it's me subjectively defining everything I deal with. So when I say this is othering, I am subjectively applying what othering means for everyone in the world, instead of just saying othering is just a way to define doing something. But I'm getting into a lot of other things besides this. I thought it was great to be in this, but this is unlocking a lot of things. So there are endless topics of conversation to choose from. It's not hard to find another that could interest me, and I'd be sadly quite refreshed, and it'd be sadly quite refreshing if a white guy for a white guy to break the status quo by doing so. Yes, I'm a proud black woman. Second time she said this. But there's a lot more to me too. And she hasn't said anything else yet so far, but maybe she's going to tell us what. Try asking a woman what she likes to read. I'm a big book nerd, so that would work for me. Ask if she's traveled anywhere interesting lately, or where she would like to go if she could. Ask about a patch on her backpack. Yeah, okay. There are lots of ways to figure out how to relate to a woman. If you're on a dating site, for instance, your research is done for you. She didn't fill out her profile just to have you skip reading it and send her a message. Read her interests, and you could get a good idea of how she'd like to be approached. Speaking about dating sites, a lot of good research out there on how like many actual women, like I said, 80% of women are only interested in 20% of the men, that kind of situation where it's like 80% of the women are interested in the top 20% of men, that's like financially, looks wise and things like that, and then whereas most of the men would just be sending messages and you get nothing back. So even if you write out a fully, and I've been on like OkCupid, I've had some interactions with people where you write out something, I actually read people's actual, I normally actually read their profiles and actually try to relate to something in there. A few answer back, most don't, but that's just the way it goes. That's something I understand about being male. It's kind of the way things go. It's the way the cookie crumbles when it comes to that. Okay, so personally, I'd think it was sweet if you took the time to learn my interests and then approached me based on what you've learned. And it's just a short hop from finding your approach cute to thinking you're pretty cute as a person too. Okay. At the end of the day, I just want to know that you're open to getting to know who I really am, not putting me in a box of who you think I am based on your perception of my race. Unlike what she's doing here by saying, as a white man, you're probably going to have these things that are going on with you. So she's not doing it, but she's saying you can do it, and she's saying it's bad when you do it, but she's not doing it here. So even if she was, it wouldn't be bad. Also, because she's a proud black woman, and black people can't be racist, and women can't be sexist because they don't have the power. Number 2, but don't act like you don't see her race. I have like a sound effect, like exclamation mark, like, well, what? I need to go back and read. Don't focus only on her race, but don't act like you don't see her race. Okay, this site has got to. I mean, they've got to be joking with this. Okay, now before you go avoiding any mention of her race at all, let me clarify. Focusing only on a woman of color's race is a problem, but it's okay to acknowledge that you are in fact aware that she's a person of color. So remember, why do you need to acknowledge it if before she was talking about, oh, it's so obvious, like, oh, yawn, but there was another article by these people saying that it's wrong to consider women complicated. And I was talking about, so are women just basic? You're just like, you know the whole like basic bitches thing? Women also hate that. So it's like, no. No. We're also, this is equality. We're all the same, yet like we're all these fantastic snowflakes. Man, this is how much longer is this? I'll make it through. I'll soldier through this. This is tough. Focusing only on women's color of race is a problem, but it's okay to acknowledge that you are in fact aware that she's a person of color. In fact, it's a hell of a lot better than saying things like, I don't see color, which might feel confusing. If you see an Asian woman and you want to avoid othering her, is telling her, I don't see you as Asian, going to send the right message? Probably not. Think of it as this way. The basis of othering people is the underlying message that they're not normal. It's cool to be treated like you're special, but the idea that a woman is different simply because she's Asian is not so great. It essentially means that you've internalized what the mainstream media and other dominant institutions have told you, that white is the default identity, and anyone who's not white is abnormal. So, okay, with some of these things, I have lived a lot of my life in the United States of America, some time in Europe. The first 5 years, I was born there, so I don't really remember too many interactions that way in that sense. Then when I was older and finishing university in Italy. But I've also spent a lot of time here in Nairobi, Kenya. So but I guess they're saying like the majority of. But it's just this whole it's this weird way how they're also just super focused on their own lives themselves. So we're talking about the metheism thing, where they are their only creator and their life is projected onto everyone. Their subjective experience is projected onto the entire world, and they don't really take into account other people's experience because majority of the world, 1/3 of the population lives in China. A lot of the world lives in Africa, but I guess this is targeted to white men, and then I guess most white men. So yeah, maybe I'm just being off on that one. Most white men do live in a culture where they would say, yes, you lived in a white culture, and this is what's being produced for you. So apologies. It's just very frustrating. Anyway, so if you're telling a woman that you don't see her race, you're implying that you only find her attractive because you see her as the default race, white, and noticing that she's not white would be a bad thing. I don't know. This goes hand in hand with the lines like, you're pretty for an Asian, or you're not like other Asian girls. Those are more insults than compliments. You can find ways to appreciate a woman of color without putting down everyone else who shares her ethnicity, as if she has to be an ethnic as possible to be appealing. Couldn't it just be an appealing way of being ethnic? No, but she already talked about you can't really use the ethnic part about. Oh man. Don't treat her race like it's something to be ashamed of, something she'd have to overcome in order to get your attention. Instead, find considerate ways to approach her race. Be thoughtful about how you acknowledge a woman's race, which means not saying any of these things. What are you? I've heard Latinas are wild in bed. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Okay, this is the thing I'd seen before. School for Social Justice. So there's an ad here. There's a School for Social Justice. If you guys are enjoying this and you really think this should be part of your repertoire, get into this. So, right here below, I may look white, but I'm a black guy in my pants, if you know what I mean. Who says that? Who has said that? What drunkard has said that? Anyway, even if you reach the point in the conversation where you're talking about race, it's not okay to go about it with dehumanizing stereotypes. Sharing a culture is one thing, but it doesn't mean everyone who shares a culture is the same. We all have unique relationships to our heritage and communities, and with more respect, you can learn the specifics of what her culture means to her. Say you meet a South Asian woman, a common pitfall is asking, where are you from? And not accepting an answer like Arizona. Yeah, I mean that one, like, where are you from? And I'm going to do a separate video on that, because that's a question I also ask people, like, where are you from? Like, people ask that, and I know some people sometimes mean, but be more specific with your terms. You can say, like, what ethnicity are you? Now that's more specific to, like, okay, what's your genetic makeup? That might now be more like, okay, where your ancestors come from, your recent ancestors. That makes more sense than where you're from. Because, like, where you're from could literally be like, I'm from downstairs. It's technically an appropriate answer, but yeah, where are you from? I think that one is, it's literally like somebody can just say where they were born or spent most of their life growing up. That's where they can say they're from, and I think that's completely fitting and appropriate. Okay, so you may be earnestly trying to learn her background, but you're approaching her with assumptions that anyone who's not white is from some exotic place, and it can make her feel like you think she doesn't belong. Also, but then there's also white people. You can ask a white person, let's say they have an accent, and you say, okay, where are you from? And they're like, oh, I'm from Sweden. Like, is that not exotic enough because it's Scandinavia? Anyway, there are better ways to learn someone's background and allow her to share about her identity on her terms. One great way to do this is by following her lead. If you seem genuinely interested in getting to know her, there's a good chance that her background will naturally come up in a way she's comfortable with. For example, if you asked me where I'd like to travel, I'd probably tell you to my father's home country of Trinidad and Tobago. Or is it Tobago? Trinidad and Tobago, Tobago. Anyway, then you could ask her a number of respectful questions about when he immigrated to the United States and what my Trinidadian roots might mean to me, without ever having to perpetuate xenophobic ideas about immigrants. Yeah. You can have similar approaches to conversations with other women of color. The next thing you know, You could be having one of those alluring, butterfly-inducing conversations without ever having to ask, but where are you really from? You see, yeah, when you double down on that thing, I mean, unless you're doing it in jest, it's not even that good of a joke. Just ask your question in a different way. Be more specific. Use your words. Use your language. This goes for everyone. Asking anyone. Even if you're asking someone you're not interested in a romantic sense. It's just, yeah, anyway. 3. Don't assume she's interested in talking to you. Yeah, of course. This is very important. Yeah, if she doesn't want to talk to you, she doesn't. But, yeah. Yeah, okay. I realize this step seems obvious. Yeah, okay. Why would you even want to talk to someone who wasn't interested in talking to you? Although I know there's many stories and things that I've heard where someone is like, yeah, I was very persistent. I kept trying to get this person to talk to me. Or a lady would say, a woman will say, yeah, my husband, the first 5 months that I knew him, I just never answered, and then he finally broke through, and I finally talked to him, and it was the best decision ever. So there's this weird thing out here, and there was a previous thing I wanted to talk about. I'll do it in a separate video, where someone was like, I told a guy I wasn't interested, and he stopped talking to me, and I'm like, why? Why? Because we're living in this Me Too times. The Me Too times just happen to be a expression of, it's a hashtag matching the times that we're living in. We were overly litigious. People will say you have raped them, say you have assaulted them for this minor things. It's kind of situations where it's like, no, like I just saw another post by Everyday Feminism with this woman standing in the street with her arms up. Like, oh, don't cry because it's over. Smile because some man told you to do. And that's what I was wondering. Do women not tell each other to smile? Is there some kind of like sisterhood where they understand if a woman is crying, like there's probably some perfectly good reason she's crying, so there's no possible way I tried to cheer her up, but like, hey, maybe if you smile. And people don't only say smile when somebody's crying. And then, anyway. Back into this. Unfortunately, society encourages men to believe women are always sexually available to them. Does it? For example, romantic movies often show men interpreting a woman's no thank you as a try harder and eventually you'll get me. Romantic movies, they're not talking about like rom-coms because those are mostly targeted to women and normally watched by women, and women love these things, so I don't know what they're talking about in this sense. This entitlement can show up in ways that you don't even notice, and it takes a particular form between white men and women of color. So again, no differences between these groups. They're all equal, but there's differences between these groups. If you implicitly believe in stereotypes about women of color, like many people do, even without realizing it, then the basics of reading when to engage and when to back off aren't enough. East Asian women, for instance, are stereotyped as submissive and demure. If an East Asian woman gives a kind of smile as she turns you down to request to talk, that doesn't mean she's actually willing to submit if you just insist on talking to her. Okay. If you've come across the common stereotype of spicy Latina women, you might think they're constantly up for sexual attention. Don't assume she must be interested just because she's a Latina. Here's an example of how stereotypes can complicate communicating my boundaries. Sometimes I fall into the habit of being extra kind to try to avoid being stereotyped as an angry black woman. Just be angry. Just be angry out there. Let your angry person out. Don't worry about these stereotypes. Just do it. If something's angering you, so let it be known. Be your genuine self. So I'm having an exhausting day, and a guy approaches me. He seems respectful enough, but at that moment, I'm just not up for a conversation. I might say, I don't want to be bothered, but give him a smile and also add, but thanks, it's nice of you to say hi. So many guys respond only to my appreciation, taking this as an invitation to keep pursuing me. At that point, I realize I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. If I hadn't been so friendly, maybe he wouldn't have misinterpreted my signals. But he might also stereotype me as an uptight just because I'm black. Women of color regularly deal with both sexual and racist harassment. When I'm responding to a greeting from a stranger, I have to be constantly aware that this casual interaction could turn disrespectful or even dangerous. Don't trap the woman you approach in this dilemma. Just read and respect her signs of whether or not she's interested. Instead, respect her boundaries. Have respect for boundaries. Have respect for boundaries, My reading is my brain is seriously struggling with this. I just want this to be over now. I think we'll get it close to the end. Having respect for boundaries doesn't necessarily mean you have to keep yourself. You have to keep to yourself if there's a woman of color you're interested in talking to. To build that vision of a world with new and respectful ways to relate to each other, we need to figure out how to be open and engaging with each other while still preserving our safety. Learning how to communicate and read each other's boundaries is a big part of that. Sure, you can give it a try and talk to me if you're interested, but know the difference between entitlement and invitation. Communicate that you're inviting me into a conversation, but you respect my freedom to choose whether or not to take you up on your invitation. I don't understand why some of the parts are in bold and some parts not. Maybe these are the key parts of it, but they just jump like paragraph to paragraph. Like here, there's 2 paragraphs later, there's another one in bold. Say you make a mistake and a woman of color feels offended by your approach, or you're totally respectful, but she doesn't feel like talking to you at the moment, or she flat out tells you that she doesn't date white guys. Is this discrimination? Should you be given some credit for trying? She flat out tells you. No, that's not racist because it's a woman of color. She can't be racist towards white people, especially white men. Anyway. So, it may feel unfair, but part of respecting a woman's boundaries is learning how not to take it personally when she turns you down. Alright. If she's not interested, it's not because she's being oversensitive. It's not even necessarily because she doesn't find you attractive, or assumes you're going to do something racist, or has some other impression of you being a bad person because you're white. The real problem isn't just you. It's the fact that women have to deal with being objectified all the time. And for women of color, that includes a combination of racism and sexism. Again here, you can't suffer racism if you're white. So a white woman doesn't have to deal with any racism from non-white men. Which doesn't happen. Not an issue for them, according to Everyday Feminism. Well, I guess they technically didn't actually say that, but according to this article, we're focusing only on white men racism towards women of color. For instance, society has objectified black women to the point that we frequently have people, strangers included, trying to pet our hair like we're exotic animals. Native women have their cultures appropriated and sexualized in the media, while they're facing the highest rates of sexual violence. They're facing the highest rates of sexual violence from men of their same race. That's just a simple fact. It's known. Check the figures. Most black women are assaulted by black men. It's just the way it goes. It's the figures. It's there. But anyway, I guess they technically don't say it's from white men here. They just say it's there. But yeah. Every woman of color has developed her own boundaries throughout her lifetime to protect herself from the impact of this constant weight. Sometimes that includes turning down a polite stranger who's trying to flirt, no matter how respectful he is. Boundaries are not a form of discrimination against you. They're an essential part of self-preservation for the people from marginalized communities. She's developed them for the sake of survival. If you're frustrated with this, direct your anger to the systems of white supremacy and the patriarchy that put this burden on women of color. Don't get angry at us for doing what we have to do to maintain our personal comfort and safety. You can extend the invitation of conversation, and be open to wherever it goes from there. It's okay if she says no. You'll have plenty more opportunities to connect with some other woman, especially if you understand how to go about it respectfully. Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's hit or miss out there. Number 4, don't use the same lines as everyone else. Just talk about the fun part. Let's talk about the fun part. Once you get the chance to talk to this intriguing woman of color, well, she's not intriguing. I guess it's intriguing to the person. That's why you'd be trying to talk to the person. What do you say to get her attention? Dudes, there are a lot of the same lines going around among you, and hardly any of them are working. The first thing you have to realize is just how many women get approached by men with entitlement that's anything from irritating to frightening. Then consider that for women of color, disrespectful interactions can also include a dose of racism. The repetition in this thing is really driving me a bit nutty here. I'm not usually attracted to your ethnicity, but I'm so into you. You're exotic. Is this a repetition? This is what was going on in the first one. What's going on with this? I'm about to bail out on this. I'm really about to bail out on this. These men think they're the first to say these things, but we've heard it all before. So you can understand why many of us have run out of patience for flirtations that are just like the others, especially when these so-called compliments feel like backhanded insults. I'm not saying this to scare you off and say you don't have a chance to stand out from the hordes of men trying to get with us. Knowing that all these guys are out there spitting the same game actually gives you good strategy. All you have to do is get creative. Because if you're following the status quo, then you're not showing that you have anything interesting to offer us. Plus, the status quo is leading you down an impressive path. Instead, be original. Okay, I get there's this difference with thing where the man is supposed to impress, and supposed to do things, supposed to do a dance, supposed to show some kind of originality to the thing, and the woman is just supposed to be there and be like, I'm going to say yes, I'm going to say no, and they're the ones who are receptive in this situation. The woman herself doesn't really have to bring too much in that opening kind of salvo, which is why I kind of understand how later on the man is doing the things and there's certain expectations from the woman, but then it's like, don't expect me to do these things. I want to be my own person. I want to be the way I want to be. And then when it's a man, no, you have to do all these things, and it's just, Okay. For the love of all things holy and or romantic or sexy or whatever floats your boat in this scenario, do something to stand out from the crowd. You might think a woman's not giving you a chance if she doesn't stick around to find out if you're going to be original, but then you'd be surprised at just how predictable the guys who approach us can be. So she's already assuming that you're just like everyone else. So from the break, you got to do something different. Take, for example, the white men who say something along the lines of, so how do you feel about white guys? Let me guess how this will turn out. He's probably assuming that I've never been with a white guy, and he's promising that the experience will be something special. He's also patting himself on the back for being open enough to be attracted to a black woman, and I'd bet money at some point he's going to treat me like some exotic token to add to his collection of ethnic girls. He's already demonstrated that he doesn't see anything in me beyond my race, but he's even categorizing himself into as no different from a general idea of what white guys are like. To me, that communicates that he's not promising any kind of experience that I haven't been offered many times before. There's a difference between saying you are something special and being just like everyone else in the process, and showing that you're going to be more creative and respectful than other guys. I don't know. I'm just going to try to power through the end of this. It's getting to the end, and I'm tired. This thing has tired me. It's taken stuff out of me. I know for a fact that you can't fit into a narrow box of just another white guy. Sorry about that. I know for a fact that I can't fit you into a narrow box of just another white guy. You're a unique human being, so show the woman you're pursuing how you stand out. So she's saying just the fact that if you're a white guy who's come to the site to read this, you're already special. She's kind of like big upping you, and I guess that's kind of good for the white guys who come to read this for actual some good advice and things like that. Yeah, you go, you white feminist male out there. Yeah. For her, it's not just having fun, but also showing that you're not following that whole oppressive status quo that the other white guys are, which, to be honest, is a huge part of how many women of color form our first impressions about white guys who approach us. Are you flirting with her because you find her exotic or because you truly appreciate her beauty? Will you treat her based on the way the rest of society tries to define her, or will you look beyond her appearance to connect with her as a person? If you can find an original way to relate to the woman you're interested in, and make it clear that you respect her choice on whether or not to engage with the conversation, then you're already standing out from the crowd in the best way possible. So here's the key. Okay, so maybe I lied when I said there's no magical key that works for everyone. Yeah, sure. Women lying, that never happens. The key to everything, including gauging if a woman of color is interested, knowing her boundaries, building a connection, and finding an original way to relate to her, is all the same thing. Listening. So we're talking about all these things where it's like, you've got to do all these things to impress me, yet listening. Okay, I don't know. It's true for any relationship, right? If we're not actually listening to each other, then we're just playing some guessing game about each other's needs and desires. And eventually, someone's going to get hurt. And okay, this is true. I don't think hearing somebody is not necessarily listening. You can hear somebody speaking in Mandarin Chinese, and if you don't really know Chinese, you're not really listening to what they're saying, if that makes any sense. Like the sound itself is coming in, but you're not actually listening, you're not actually understanding. So there is that. I can't guarantee that nobody will get hurt with these strategies, but I can assure you that listening to what a woman tells you in both words and body language will get you on the right track. It'll show that you're interested in what matters to her, and you see her as a unique person and not just an object. Through the body language thing, there's part of the issues I think with the sexual harassment thing is people saying, oh, you can't go with body language cues. You have to actually get affirmative consent. She has to literally say yes. You have to ask, can I do this? And she has to say, yes, you can do this for this amount of time. And body language is supposed to be not an invitation for this. So it's odd how they will sometimes use body language as an actual viable means of communication. Okay, you'll also learn the specifics of how she'd like to be treated, which means you have my blessing to throw any of my suggestions out of the window if you find out they don't work for her. Okay, this is about honoring who she is as a person, rather than relying on any preconceived notions of who she is. Following these principles instead of the terrible ideas behind patriarchy and white supremacy will allow you to have an intimate and romantic relationships based on real connections and understanding. All of us are developing our own ways of connecting with each other as we dismantle these oppressive systems between us. We're all figuring it out as we go along. So you're not the only one who's had some. Okay, so you're not the only one who has some unpleasant lessons to unlearn. You're committing to doing better, and that's what's going to make the difference. I already think you're pretty cool for sticking with me through this guide to learn how to be respectful. Carry these lessons with you, and you just might find someone else who sees this appeal in you too. So yeah, Maisha Z. Johnson is a digital content associate and staff writer for Everyday Feminism. You can find her writing at the intersections and shamelessly indulging with her obsession of pop culture around the web. Maisha's past work includes Community United Against Violence, the nation's oldest LGBTQ anti-violence organization, and Fired Up, program for California Coalition of Women Prisoners, and her own project, Inkblot Arts. Maisha taps into creative arts and digital media to amplify the voices of those often slighted. Like her on Facebook, follow her on Twitter at MZJWords. And yeah, that's it for this video. I might get into some of these more. Like I said, I've been following this site. Rather interesting, some of the things they post where it's like, wow, I wonder what's going to say that. Where I kind of think like, hey, I think it's going to say this, and I actually read the article and see if it actually says that and matches it. But just kind of trying to understand the point of view, the worldview that these people have, and it's rather I don't want to say surprising. It gives me pause. It makes me think like, wow, this is quite something. If I saw the world in the way that they see the world, it makes me appreciate the actual individuality and diversity of the way people actually look at the world. It's not something that I would want. And here's a picture of Maisha. See, she's got the natural hair out there. She's relatively attractive, I'd say. I don't know. I can't tell how old she is, but so more power for her if she's been out there and successful. And let me know what you guys thought about this list, this article, about the reading, some of my thoughts that I had in it. Have you guys checked out this Everyday Feminism site before? Have you interracially dated? Have you found any of what she said in here actually useful? Do you happen to be a woman of color who is reading this or listening to this video for a chance, and do you think those are things that you'd advise a white man to know before they interacted with you? So that's it for this video. Like, share, and subscribe. Until next video, this is Silas. Goodbye. Links below to the merchandise store. Like, share, and subscribe, and the comments. Part of my main reason doing this. It's a small channel right now. Definitely subscribe and add that and share this video. But also, I really enjoy actually having conversations with people in the comment section. So even if you just have a small idea or small thought that you want to share with us, leave a comment, and I'll probably interact with you. And goodbye.